allow me to introduce my latest creation, the stick. Hello fellow CNCnutz and welcome. This is the first piece in a 3-piece build. Here is a somewhat more interesting second piece. It simply slides onto the pole like so. We have the third piece, nothing more than a piece of dowel that I've embedded a 6mm threaded rod into, and another piece of dowel with a corresponding thread in it. It simply goes in here, screws up on the other side, and it will lock the head to the pole. And today I'm going to show you how I made it. Now, I'm sure that many of you have noticed that this project is based on the 3D model I made of a horse's head in the last episode, but with one small difference. The original model had 2 eyes on one side. I'll show you later why I thought that was a good idea, but once I got it built and painted, it became painfully obvious that it wasn't such a good idea after all. More likely to scare small children or people who just don't like spiders. Let's take a quick look at what's inside. So here's an unpainted one and unglued, and it starts off with the model of our horse's head. And what I've also done is I then mirrored it, so I had 2 of them. Of course, these fit together very nicely, but they're too thin to go onto our stick here. So we need a piece to go in the center. For that, I machined this here up. It's the exact same profile cut as the 3D model, and I've cut out this section inside. That is designed to slide onto our pole. Now you notice there's a hole here, and on these here I've drilled a hole and also pocketed down a small section as well. The idea there is that hole is right in the center of our opening here, so that we can just drill straight through and have a method of locking this to the pole here. The recessed area is there so that the handles here can actually recess right into the horse's head, as well as locking it in place. When you tighten it up, it locks everything to the pole. Nice and simple. This here is nothing more than a piece of dowel with a hole drilled in the center, bit of threaded rod threaded into it and just screwed in. It has a corresponding bit again with a hole in the center and a thread that matches. In my case, I've used 6mm threaded rod, but 1/4 inch would work just as well. So now let's go and have a look at how the cam work was done. Before I start, I'd just like to thank Vectric for their support of my channel by upgrading my version of VCarve Pro to Vectric Aspire. I've been using Vectric software since 2006 with Photo VCarve, Cut 3D and VCarve Pro, but with the addition now of Aspire, it gives me the opportunity to try out making my own 3D models, and this project wouldn't have been possible without it. So now we need to create our files using the 3D model I created in the last episode. Well, the one with the 1 eye, not the 2 eyes. So we're starting off with our blank canvas here. It's going to be 600mm square, 18mm. We'll be using MDF for this project. I'm going to start by importing my 3D model. use this one here, and there it is there. Now the first thing I need to do is I need to get an outline of the model made, and I also need to create the centerpiece as well as the recess and the hole for the handle to go in. I need to create that all on this model here before I move anything. So let's do that. The easiest way to get an outline of this model is to use Trace Bitmap. I'm just going to come along here, wind up the threshold to maximum, and go preview. Apply, close, and there we have our cutout for it. Now next I'm going to create a copy of that, go Control C and Control V. I'm just going to right click and move that copy to a new layer. Call it layer 2, and I'm going to make it red. Also make it the active layer. I'm going to come up here to layers and I'm going to turn off layer 1. So this profile I just made, I'm going to turn into the centerpiece. I need to have this cutout made in it. To do that, I'm going to come here to the rectangle tool and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to make it 25 millimeters wide and 150 millimeters long. I can now take this and I'm going to rotate it till it's at the angle that I want it to be, and I can position it, and the arrow keys are good for fine adjustment. Can zoom in a little bit more. That looks pretty good there. Going to use the scissor tool and just cut it out there. And there's my cutout. Now it's really important not to move that model at this stage, because the next thing I need to do is I need to create this recess and hole in it, and it needs to be in the correct position. So I'm going to come over to the circle tool. I'm going to create a circle with a radius of 18 millimeters. I'm going to bring it here and just hit enter. Then I can zoom in and I can use the arrow keys to position it, and I think somewhere there will be about right, maybe a little bit lower. That looks good. Next thing I want to do is I want to create another circle for the hole in the center of it, which will be 6 millimeters in diameter, and I'll just put that in the center. And that is that. I can now select this and I'm just going to move that to layer 1. And that's because it belongs with the horsehead model, not with the centerpiece. So now we can move the centerpiece out of the way and bring back our horsehead model and create the mirror. I'm just going to select the horsehead here, take it up out of the way and rotate it, which will give me room to put the new model. I can now turn back on layer 1, and there's my horse's head there. I'm going to select that and hit the mirror tool. I'm going to mirror it to the right, and because I've selected the outside toolpath and the hole and recess, it all goes with it. Just going to move that across a little bit. That looks pretty good. And this model here, I'll just use the arrow keys just to pull it up out of the way, and that looks pretty good there. Next I'll just select all the models and center it all in my material. It's now time to start making the toolpaths. I'm going to start with the roughing cut for the 3D. Come over here to 3D roughing toolpath. First thing we're going to find out is what thickness our model is. It's 18 millimeters thick, and I already knew it was 17.5 millimeters thick because I checked it earlier. I'm going to have a 6 millimeter clearance. I'll just go OK. And now I need to select my tool. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch down cutting spiral bit. And here's the secret with doing the roughing toolpaths, and that's the depth of pass, or the pass depth. I've got mine set to 0.08. Now the reason you want a shallow pass depth is that gives you more layers. It can go down and cut away more material, whereas if you just put a large number in there, make it say 1/4 inch deep each pass, you might only get 2 passes and it'll probably take away very little material indeed. But if you make that pass depth nice and shallow, it will take lots of cuts and remove more material for you. It's a balance between how long it's going to take to remove all this material on all these different passes and how much material it will actually remove for you to make it easier for that final pass on the with your smaller cutter. So 0.08 is pretty good for this model here. I'm going to use a 40% step over. So let's calculate that. And you'll see here I have a machining allowance of 1mm. So let's preview that. And there it is once it's done its passes. Let's move on to the finishing toolpath. This time I'm going to use a ball nose cutter, 3mm. Going to do, again, follow the model boundary, raster cut, 0 degrees. There's no grain on this here to worry about. I'm going to have a safe Z of 6mm, and I'm just going to calculate this. And let's preview it. And that looks excellent. So the next thing we need to look at is the holes. And I'm going to select the 2 larger ones there, which are going to be pockets. And I'm going to pocket them. Now I've decided to pocket them to a depth of 12mm. That's going to leave me 6mm between the bottom and my pocket and the back of the material. I think that will be about right. When I hover the mouse over the position where the holes are, it's showing me that it's about 11.5mm. So that'll make my pocket 11.5. It'll make that pocket depth about 5.5 to 6mm in depth. So we'll just calculate that, and again I'm using the 1/8 inch down cutting spiral bit. I'll just preview that toolpath, and there's my pockets. Next I'm going to select the 2 circles. I'm going to profile it, go on the inside, and I'm going to go 18mm deep, again 1/8 inch cutter, calculate that, and we'll preview that as well. And there's the holes. So that's basically the horse's heads machined. All we have to do is cut it out. So next I'm going to be cutting that and the centerpiece out. I'm going to select all 3 profile cuts. I come here to profile, 18mm deep, 1/8 inch cutter. I'm going to be cutting on the outside. This time I'm going to add some holding tabs. I'll make them 3D tabs, 12mm long, 3mm deep. And I can either go around and just click where I want the tabs to be, or I can come up here and select how many tabs I want. We'll say 8 tabs. Go add tabs, and it automatically puts tabs all the way around. Any you find in annoying places, just pick them up. Just drag them to where you want them to be. Like try and get them on easy places that I can sand. Put that one on the inside there, that way it doesn't matter if it doesn't clean up properly. I just try not to have them inside hollows. That looks pretty good, so I'll just close that and I'll calculate. and we can preview that. All we need to do now is save the G-code, take it out of the machine and cut it. Once the model was glued together, I've been through and given it a coat of primer. For this I've just used a water-based acrylic primer. Now where possible, where I have the right colour, I'm going to be using these here. They're resin test pots. These are an outdoor rated paint and I use these on a lot of my projects. Anywhere I don't have the right colour, I will use these here, a range of just artist paints. Again, these are acrylics, and I have used these on outdoor applications as well, and they don't seem too bad, but not as good as these here. Got a selection of artist brushes, though it's probably the larger ones that I'll be using on this project, and I find the ones with the nylon bristles to be better than the natural pig bristle ones like this here. The nylon ones are easier to control. I'm going to start off by painting the eyes, and I'm going to do them in white. Now I'm trying to keep the paint in the designated areas here, but it isn't very easy. One of the advantages of doing the light colours first is I can then come back with the darker colours and they should cover better than had I tried to do it the other way around. Between coats, I like to go and clean out my brush before applying the next colour. Of course, because it's acrylic paint, it washes out really well in water. So what on earth possessed me to put two eyes on the one side of the horse? Well, it's all based on this here, the original hobby horse project I made quite a few years ago. As you can see, it has two eyes on each side. And because of the way the eyes are further down the model, it really doesn't creep you out when you look at it straight on. Well, not too much anyway. But I thought it looked really good, and I think looking from the side it does look a lot better. But I must admit, now that I see it side by side with the new model, I think I prefer this one. Now this one here was made more with the traditional stick with the rubber on the end. It's been decorated with here, and I actually made 3 of these, and they were all decorated by different people, and they all look completely different. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of the other 2. But that's what basically prompted me to build this one here. I wanted to create my own hobby horse design, not use somebody else's model, and see what I could come up with. I must say, I'm really pleased with the final result. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learned something new. If you want to make your own hobby horse, I'll put a link in the description box below this video to where you can download the files and make your own. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to Vectric for making this project possible. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers! Right, we're out of here. And behave yourself. One wrong foot for you and you'll find yourself down the glue factory. Mind you, you're 90% glue anyway.